I have an
Mm.
entrepreneurial mindset, man. It's like when you're an entrepreneur, you have to take on so many different hats. That's when I found out that BDRing is a lot like marketing because I basically did a lot of not the marketing job, but I did a lot of marketing research, did a lot of sales research. I did a lot of product research to see what we do. If I were to boil that into something, it would be curiosity. Just be
Yeah.
curious and
Yeah.
learn a lot because yeah, I'll admit, I mean, even still to this day, I'm what 25, like I still think I know way more than I actually do. Like I'll admit that. And it was definitely worse at 23 because I didn't know just how much I didn't know. Now I'm at least kind of shedding some light on the fact that like there's a long way to go, but I'm excited for the journey. Back then, I was like, all right, I got a good script. Let's get after it.
Landing a great job opportunity is sometimes very challenging. Breaking into tech and getting hired as a sales rep can be even harder. When I was applying to my first sales jobs, I also struggled with the unknown. What to expect, what the tech industry was like, and how do I break in? After years of being an SDR myself, I've decided to build something I wish I had in the beginning. My name is Stefan, and in the SDR Hire Podcast, I interview successful SDRs and salespeople who share their stories straight from the trenches. Learn how they got their first job offers, how they succeed every day in their roles, and what makes them stand out in their organizations. We all have what it takes. We just need someone to remind us of the opportunity and give us a better chance for success. Let's get your next SDR gig. Hey, welcome back to the SDR Hire Podcast. I'm your host, Stefan, and this is a place where you can learn from top producing sales development representatives what it's like actually working in tech sales. How do you break in? What do companies look for? And how to succeed as an SDR all for free. And today, I'm chatting with Armand Uno, a solutions developer who's just been promoted a few months ago from a BDR role. He works for a cybersecurity company called Trident Group, and in his new role, he's developing the services he's actually selling. In addition to his job, he started his own podcast earlier this year called the Playhard Podcast, where he interviews founders and successful entrepreneurs about battling burnout, how they cope with stress, how they develop new hobbies, and simply shares how superstars like to play along while building their empires. So I can't wait to dive in. Armand, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a really great intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did my homework at least a little bit. Uh, awesome. Let's dive in. What's your background? How did you end up in sales? Was it like the first thing was tech
Yeah.
sales? Was it something else earlier? Like what did that look like?
Yeah, so to go into my tech sales background, we have to step back a little bit further. So when I got out of college, I started as a allocation analyst for a Fortune 100 company. It was more of a supply chain role, and I realized I didn't really enjoy the role itself. I really liked the company, I liked the people and the culture and like the relationships I made, but I realized like that's what I like doing is building relationships, talking to people. So when looking at my career, the natural next step everyone told me was you should get into sales. Um, so there we go. That's kind of how it started. The company Trident Group is one very close to my heart. It's actually one that my dad is a founder of. So I saw it grow. Shout out to him, pretty baller move. When I was like, me and my other brother were starting college, he just like starts a company, pretty big gamble. And it's
Wow.
so far paid off in the past like 5, 6 years, about 50, 55 employees, like growing steadily year over year. So yeah, it's doing really well. But the CEO of the company is a salesman by nature, and so he is like, all right, you want to get into sales, like I can teach you whatever, but you got to start at the beginning. Like we want BDRs. He told me, and I to this day believe it. All of the best salespeople started cold calling and BDRing, and the reason for that is you have to know how to prospect. A lot of times when you're like an established AE at an established company, they're like the sales cycle is kind of broken up by different roles. So when you're an AE, there's like the farmers who kind of grow accounts, and then there's the hunters who prospect and find accounts. When you're at a smaller company like a startup, you kind of have to do it all. And
Yeah.
so I was thankfully started in the BDR role, realized that sales isn't what I wanted to end up in. Yet at the same time, every single skill I learned as a BDR, pretty much every single one, I'm using in my new role, which you wouldn't expect as like a solutions developer. But a lot of my job is facilitating conversations internally and also talking to customers, customer success. And in no world would I have had like that confidence to have clear messaging and emails, that confidence to just pick up the phone and talk to people, or to like the know-how and tenacity to bug internal teammates message after message after like had I not done this role. So super thankful for all the lessons. But yeah, it has been quite the interesting career path. It's not really a ladder. It's been like a side to side movement sometimes.
Oh yeah, a few things there. You mentioned that you realized that sales isn't something you want to end your career with, but you realized how important it was for building it up, which is
Hmm.
something I really related with because basically, what things that I'm doing today really aren't that much sales. Like it's more of marketing plays, like building this podcast
Yeah,
and building audiences and all of that, but I wouldn't trade my sales experience for literally anything in the world.
100%. Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
So it's so important, like the um, consistency that I built, the skills to reach out to people, to create relationships, to talk to people, to listen to them active. I mean, you know all of this, but like
yeah.
that's invaluable. And so
I've noticed it boils down to, if you want to be valuable to a company, either learn to code or learn to persuade. That's that's your role, no matter what you do. Like as a solutions developer, I enable the sales team, but also like I do have to pitch my own products. Like the services I build, I have to show like this is why you should be selling this instead. And I'm basically selling to my sales team. So it's a lot of, yeah, that like either learn to code or learn to persuade, and you'll be invaluable to any company.
no, I love that. I love that. Awesome. So um, was Trident like your first, let's say, tech role
Yes, yes. The
in
other company
sales?
was like a merchandising retail, like a brick and mortar retailer.
Gotcha. And what was the process like? So you mentioned your dad was a part of it as a
Yeah,
co-founder, I'm assuming. Yeah. So I guess that's how you kind of got the intro
yeah.
with the CEO. Like, what did that look like, and then what was the interview
So
look like?
I had a very different like role, I would say, and or sorry, introduction, just because I
Hmm.
was one of their first interns. So when I was in college, I would intern for the CEO, and one of the tasks that I had was, we were, I mean, as a small company, you got to do as much like unscalable, scrappy things to grow. So
Oh
we were
yeah.
trying to build our partnerships with different providers. So one of them was for AWS. You had to have a certain number of people pass your AWS tests, and they were pretty tough. So like at 18 or 19, I was taking this, like I'm not a coder myself or developer, or like
Mhm.
I was taking a cloud architect, like how to build out VPNs and stuff. Like I was taking a course on this and passing this test at like 19 with zero experience. But that was my job. Like as an intern, they were like, "Hey, we really need this." And I think to me that was like my proving ground, because I mean, obviously my dad is one of the founders, but this company has done a really good job of being like, yeah, we get that, but you need to show your worth, like your merit at the same time. And that's kind of how it's been. And it's been very good and helpful and healthy for me in that sense. So I've never just like been handed jobs. Like even in sales, they were like, you're starting at the hardest position in the company. Like, let's be honest, SDR is one of the hardest positions you
Oh
can
yeah.
do. So yeah, it was like I kind of proved that I could learn and give the tasks whatever was given. And then I had an interview when I was working at this other company, and what they did with me is they did a trial period. So I was really over the classic 9 to 5. I wanted more experience, and I was living out in Boston for this company. So they said, all
Mhm.
right, if you're in Boston, when you get out at 5 o'clock, that's still 2 o'clock on the West Coast. So from 2 to 5 on the West Coast, you're going to be making cold calls. So I was basically
Yep.
working like 9 to 9, maybe even more sometimes, because it would go like till 6 or so. But I was doing the SDR role. Like I didn't have a formal interview, but they were like, you're working part-time for us as a cold caller while you have this other job. And then when your lease is up, you can move back to San Diego and full-time
Mhm.
run it. So I was kind of able to be like, they had a trial period with me to see if I could really do the gig. And that was basically my interview, was like that, I don't know what, 6 7 month trial of like 3 hours to 4 hours a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was pretty brutal because we'll get into that in a sec. But yeah, that was what I have for there.
So hold on, was that in Triton or somewhere else?
Yes, that was Trident. That was Trident.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, compared to how interviews go these days, that's a pretty hectic way of kind of getting the job,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, but yeah, no, I didn't want to suggest that it was easy for you to get in. On the contrary, I think that I had a chat with Tom Slocum, and one of the things he said about getting jobs is, it's not enough to apply. It's not enough to even, hustle your way in. It's more about having relationships, having somebody inside the companies
Yeah.
to give you that,
I agree.
extra push or whatever. And I think like today, SDRs or other folks who are trying to get into the role keep missing the point, which is like start building the relationships by reaching out to people, having conversations, yada yada, to have somebody from the inside who can at some point just give you a warm introduction, or rather a warm referral to the hiring manager once the hiring starts or something like
Yeah.
that. So I want to actually emphasize that you really did a good job there of
Yeah. I
just,
appreciate it.
I mean, like as a
And
as
yeah,
general thought.
another point to be noted is like an SDR's job is lead gen. That's a big correlation with marketing. I was actually under the marketing team. Like there's the whole
Yeah.
debate. I don't know if that comes up in your show, should you go under sales or marketing? But
Yeah.
I mean, from the marketing perspective, when you're marketing yourself, you want your name on the decision maker's head subconsciously as many times so that when it comes between two decisions, they're like, huh, I have a good feeling about this one.
Mhm.
But it's because they've been hearing your name over and over and they don't really consciously remember. But that's marketing. You just see the brand so many times. So when you're mindlessly picking out in the store, you're like, huh, Coca-Cola. Yeah, I remember that one. And then you grab that.
There we go.
Hey there. I wanted to let you in on a couple of additional resources available other than the podcast and the social media content. So I recently started a newsletter where I break down the best pieces of advice from the podcast about getting hired, how to be a top performing sales rep, into actionable nuggets that you can apply literally as soon as you read them. And in addition, if you're currently looking for an SDR role, you can fill out a form to let me know, and I'll do my best to help put you in front of tech companies hiring for SDRs. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, it comes down, like I always argue that sales and marketing are basically the same, or maybe like two sides of the same coin. And I know that
I agree.
there's just
I
this
agree.
infinite debate whether sales or marketing is better, and it in my mind it just depends on the type of company, on the type of culture that you're
Yeah.
growing, and the type of resources you have at your disposal. Like if your head of marketing, VP of marketing, has been an SDR and is now running content as well as like the podcast and the SDR team, fuck yes, like
Yeah.
roll with that guy. Don't hire a VP of sales, not necessarily right away, right? But like if your VP of sales understands a bit of marketing, like, what I'm saying is like it doesn't really matter as long as the job gets done and there are results at
Agreed.
play, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the skills are the same, or
Oh
not
yeah.
the same, but a lot of the skills build upon
Overlap.
each other.
Yeah.
Like as a SDR, one of the things that benefited me the most, and honestly, it's to this day a big passion of mine, is so to fast forward a little, I went from not having a coach and not knowing what to do in the SDR role for many, many, many months until it was brought like that. We can talk about that's one thing I wish I knew better,
Hmm.
is to actually get the help. And if you don't have it, then have your company bring someone in to help you out, because this is not something
Wow.
you can just do without any experience. Like you need someone coaching you, honestly. But when I did get like coaching for SDR, one of the greatest things was I learned about copywriting.
Mm.
And that's a marketing skill. Yet you need it to write cold emails, or even like emails when you're talking to people. Like you need to know how to communicate effectively. And essentially copywriting is just, communicating through type like text versus like talking on the phone.
Yep.
But it's a passion that's followed me to this day. I love copywriting. I found a new love in writing. And that's a on paper a marketing skill, but it's something that BDRs and SDRs learn very early on, and it's really important.
Yeah. Totally agree. Like copywriting has been a revelation for me, and it took me a while to understand that. Like I've always been more of an email guy, so
Yeah.
when I understood it, actually I'm doing copywriting just for sales. Then I just realized that copywriting is actually everything. Like, and especially
Yeah,
today,
it
like
really is.
writing copy for a website, writing copy for ads, writing copy for a blog, right? Like it's literally the same thing. Even for writing copy for like a cold call script, it's the same thing. It's just a different medium, but it's like you want to relay a message anyway. um I love how this conversation is
Yeah.
going. I do want to dive into a little bit more about Trident and like the ICP and what you're going after,
Yeah.
but and your current role, because I think it's very interesting. But I just want to just take a look at like what's Consult Place and what's up with
Yeah.
Playhard Podcast.
So Consult Place was a project I was working on with a friend. He's continued, but I kind of pivoted just because of a time thing. Like I wanted to focus a bit more on, quite honestly, the podcast and my job. But I was starting a company with a friend in cybersecurity. It's like a two-sided marketplace. It's a Yelp for cybersecurity consultancies. Like the big problem there is, and if anyone's interested, let me know. I can direct you to the right person and he'll help you out. But
Oh yeah.
a lot of IT consultancies or IT companies have difficulty knowing who in cybersecurity consulting, quite honestly, is trustworthy, or like who. It's a lot of referral based, and there's no kind of centralized form of reviews or centralized form of like, this is who you can trust. Like I've been in your shoes, I know what it's like. So that's kind of what Consult Play. Yelp for cybersecurity consulting is the best thing I can do, and it was tons of fun working it out. I would say that's where I learned a lot of, like that's where I learned a lot of finding your target audience and finding a lot of the right messaging in conjunction with how I was learning that and try and group, just because starting like growing a two-sided marketplace, that's what you need. Like you need the right people in there.
Yeah.
So that was that. But I got out around May 2022, and the podcast, so much fun. Probably the most fun thing. I've described it as a passion project because it's not exactly a hobby, but it's not exactly a job either. So it's more something that I'm really passionate about. And I see it, my dad being an entrepreneur, like it's a podcast for entrepreneurs to talk about their habits and hobbies. And they talk about the stuff they do for fun. And I focus more on the psychology of an entrepreneur, like who they are, what they like doing, why they're being an entrepreneur, like what kind of like is in their head that triggered this. I want to take on this incredible amount of risk and stress, but I know I can have a really good end product. And then how do they dispel that stress? I was more interested in the psyche of an entrepreneur than the actual like tactics or like business building side of it. So I decided, yeah, I just wanted to do a podcast and just talk about who they are as people, and it's been so much fun, man. I'm having a great time, as you probably have with this podcast. You meet cool people, you have great conversations, and I'm gonna even say, if you're a BDR and you want to work on talking to random people, asking questions, there is no better way to learn the interviewing skill than podcast.
Yep. It's actually also a good way of practicing active listening, although I fail at it more than a few times over episodes, as you probably and I came across the same thing as well with your own. But like I sometimes like, you just told me an awesome story and I started talking about myself, although like it's okay, we have a dialogue.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's tough, but like I use it to practice that as well. And definitely I can relate so much with having a
Yeah.
podcast. It's so much fun. And like I told you before we started filming, I think that having a podcast that interviews founders, but from that perspective of like, how to deal with stress, how to, play hard as much as you work hard,
Exactly.
and what's driving
Yeah.
you, and like how do you balance that shit out. It's like, and like I said, like, I'm not the best person to do it. I don't, I don't know how to balance stuff as well, but I'm definitely gonna dive into your part. But anyway, this is awesome. So you're definitely an entrepreneurial type. Has that kind of been a thing for you in your BDR role as well? Because I have this theory that like successful BDRs will be successful entrepreneurs, and like vice versa,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs would probably have been awesome BDRs.
So I have an interesting kind of perspective on that, because I was the first BDR at my company and the
Right.
only one for a while. So there was me and another guy started. He had to take a break for a little bit, but then he came back, thankfully. But for a while, I was the only BDR, and it felt like, I mean, I had to be entrepreneur. Like as the only BDR, like you're starting this team. So in a sense, like I definitely think that the skills of a BDR are essential for entrepreneurship and vice versa. Like you have to have this kind of try all the time, be okay with failing. You're going to be rejected mentality, of the sense that like the more you try and test different things, the more you see not just what works, but what works for you. I've noticed that with a lot of entrepreneurs. And when you're cold calling, things like that, it's your own personal style is what shines. Your own personal style is your differentiator. That's what makes you different. Like your company could have all these products that are different, whatever. But like in order for you to convey that, you also kind of have your different. Because for me, talking a little bit about Trident Group, I'm cold calling and cold emailing in the cybersecurity industry, like about cybersecurity. It was very difficult to not have any experience and then talk to people who are literally told, don't talk to strangers, don't open emails because you will be getting hacked. Like everyone gets hacked all the time from phishing. That's what it is. Phishing. Here's a cybersecurity thing for all you guys. Most hacks, the people don't break in, they just log in. They find other ways to take your data, which involves phone calls, which involves emails, everything, and they just log into your system. Most hacks aren't actual like some guy with a hood behind a computer. It's social engineering. That's all it is. It's social engineering. They take your credentials, and then if you don't have 2FA, they just get it. So it's like I'm talking to people who were trained to not talk to outside people, and it was so difficult. But at the same time, like I was just starting this program, like I had no experience. So dude, talk about like trying and failing. That was my job for months and months. But it taught me so much.
No, I can imagine. It's no, I was just kind of imagining how that might have looked like, because it's hard enough being an SDR and being young and not knowing really anything and being, well,
Yeah.
honestly scared from the folks you gotta
Yeah.
call or you gotta like have meetings with, whatever. And then on top of that, it's like very hard to get in industry where like nobody wants to talk to you, even more so than anyone else.
Yeah.
It must have been tough. So like you mentioned, cybersecurity, like what is the product and like what is like who were you selling into? I can assume
Yeah.
CISOs and like
Yes. So those
yeah.
consulting services is what we do, but I was specifically, what I focused on cold calling was like pen testing. So we go in and it's an ethical hacker breaks into your network like with your permission, but they show you these are all the issues that you guys have. This is what you need to patch up. Like this is the severity of that. So start here, go like all that sort of thing. So I was selling pen testing, and we it was interesting because we go to a lot. We have like a lot of different like verticals that we go into. So I would try different ones for our list. And it was really interesting to see like, so finance is very heavily regulated to protect people's data. I mean, as you would hope, finance, the medical, healthcare, things like that, like they're super regulated. And then I would call them and they were on top of their stuff, but it would be hard to break in because they have a lot of current vendors. So then I would have to like compare with vendors and stuff. Then I was talking to sometimes construction, which tends to lag behind on the tech. I was talking to some dude. So best practice for pen test is, I wouldn't even say this is best practice. I would say this is standard is once a year. Best practice, you should probably be doing a little bit more, just to like make sure there's so many things that you can break into. So like you could be testing your network versus testing your cloud versus testing like the different SaaS applications you have. You should be testing all of those at least once a year. But like most people just test their network once a year, and I don't think that's enough. But I was talking to like construction and having to tell them like this guy does a pen test once every few years, and he was like, why would I want someone breaking into my network? And I was like, dude, like having to just kind of talk to someone and be like, well, like trying to explain it no longer becomes the value of my company. Like I was actually kind of worried. I was like, dude, like someone's probably already in there. Like you bring us in to help you see how someone unwanted gets in. So yeah, it really varied who we targeted, but I would say I was very methodical on like if I was doing that for construction, I would only set my list to construction for that sequence. Like I wouldn't industry hop when I was doing sequences. I was very much like if I'm doing hospitality, it's hospitality. And even then I would be like, okay, if I talk to a casino, my messaging is going to be a little different than if I'm talking to a restaurant than if I'm talking to. So like I was definitely like, even within these buckets, I was looking at the specific companies and being like, okay, this is how I would position that wording.
Nice. I love that. I've always wondered what it's like selling cybersecurity services, and like I guess it really comes down to the same thing as selling anything else, which is like, okay, defining what the pain is, what the problem is, like
Yeah.
shedding light on it, and then just kind of offering some relief for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say
All right.
that's the tip I would give to anyone is quite honestly, like before you do anything is figure out your audience, like who are you specifically targeting? Who does your product help and what pain are they solving? Like my life would have been so much easier if I would have focused on that first and then made calls versus going straight for the calls, because it was a mess, man. Before I got the coaching, it was just a beat down.
That's the thing. Like, how do you basically know all? How does one person who is very young and doesn't know all of this, how can they know, right? Now, obviously, by listening to podcasts like
Yeah.
this, but
Oh, I got an
that's
answer.
the challenge.
Have an
Go ahead.
entrepreneurial mindset. Have an
Mm.
entrepreneurial mindset, man. It's like when you're an entrepreneur, you have to take on so many different hats. And that's when I found out that BDRing is a lot like marketing, because I basically did a lot of, not the marketing job, but I did a lot of marketing research. I did a
Mhm.
lot of sales research. I did a lot of product research to see what we do. I would talk to a lot of our pen testers and like all these. So like it's okay. So if I were to boil that into something, it would be curiosity. Like just be
Yeah.
curious and learn a lot, because yeah, I'll admit, I mean, even still to this day, I'm what, 25, like I still think I know way more than I actually do. Like I'll admit that. And it was definitely worse at 23 because I didn't know just how much I didn't know. Now I'm at least kind of shedding some light on the fact that like there's a long way to go, but I'm excited for the journey. Back then I was like, all right, I got a good script, let's get after it. And so, yeah, it's just not helpful.
I think that every one of us needs to kind of go through those things in the beginning, at least. But I always argue that, you don't even have to know how to write good cold emails. You don't have to know how to do cold calls properly, as much as you have to know what your target audience is,
Hmm.
what's your
Hmm.
ICP, and like
Yeah.
do the prospecting part right. Like once that is done, like you can easily do the rest of the things like quick. But if you don't do that properly, you'll have unqualified conversations. You'll have so many
Yeah.
unsubscribes and like, don't call me ever again, all of that shit. And like,
It's a
it
waste
comes
of
down
time for all parties.
for everybody. Exactly. Exactly. And so, like I would always focus first on like if you're new to the BDR world, like and if you're trying to break in, just figure out the company that you kind of like, and then understand who they're selling into. Like what's the ICP? Like that's one of my best performing sequences I've ever made, which is like newly hired VPs of sales that might need new SDRs. I was selling like SDR as a service. Um, and I would mention their ICP, like that was my variable in the campaign. Like,
Hmm.
you might need help selling, your product type, right? To target audience, and that did magic. Like, okay, I just shared my biggest secret, but
Yeah.
that's like such a powerful thing to
Yeah.
mention, especially to a sales leader or a
Yeah.
marketing leader. But anyway, okay. So, okay, I asked you about the interview part, and like, what would you just say to somebody who's you know preparing for an interview today, and like, what questions would they ask to the hiring managers? I think that's often
Mm.
a big problem for a lot of people coming in. Like, what would you ask?
So if I were to do it again, I would ask kind of how the comp plan is structured. That would be a big one. I guess a part of it, I would ask to be described the comp plan because I didn't understand. I didn't know what kind of comp plan I was signing up for, and that did kind of bite me in the end. I think, yeah, we were all just figuring it out, but I think that would be a big one. Another thing I would ask for the company is I would ask what other SDR experiences have been like, or how long the program's been. And a big one, another one I would ask is what tools do they have to be an SDR? Because if they're just, I remember so at one point someone was offering me a role somewhere else, and I was like considering it. And I just kind of asked like, okay, so I'd be doing the SDR role, like what tools do you have? And they were like, oh, you just kind of like keep track of everything on your own, you do it. I was like, that was such a quick no, because like this role would be, you need set yourself up for success. There's so much I could say about this. Like even still, I would say the bare minimum tools is having a CRM and some form of email blaster, like that minimum. If you don't have that, like even an auto dialer would be really helpful, but those can run you up expensive if you're not like if you're still ramping up and they're not that mature of a team. But with a mature team, an auto dialer will like multiply your efforts. Dude, in 1 week I did like 6 times the amount. We did like a trial of an auto dialer, and it was gnarly. You could do like 600 calls a day. It was so crazy, but it is rather expensive. But I would say like once you start figuring out what the tools are, it's really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I've never used an auto dialer, but I've seen examples of how insane it can get. And
Shout out
like
Orem. Orem's a good one because that's the one we tried out, and you could do up to like 7 or 8 calls at one time. I think the recommended is 4. I would do 4, and it would automatically pick up when it was a person versus a voicemail saying hi. Like it had an AI that would pick up that, and it would send you straight to that person. So you're doing 4 calls at once. It was so helpful. Like it made you were having conversations left and right. Like it was crazy.
That's so cool. What happens when like two people answer at a very close time?
I don't know. I imagine they get that question a lot. I remember asking that, but I remember the answer being like, it actually happens a lot, like less than you would think. Like it's a very rare occurrence. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Hey everyone, I started SDR Hire in the first place to help as many of you as I can to land your next job, become better at sales, and just help you propel your career. So if you're finding value in this content and you know somebody who will benefit from it, please share it with them, tag them in a post, send them via text, share it wherever you share stuff with your community. As always, all of this is completely free and is here to help everyone succeed. So your recommendation goes a long way. Appreciate you, and let's get back to the show.
So how big is the team right now at the company? So and I do want to ask you about your role. Like, what are you doing currently?
So the team has grown. It's two people now. But I moved out. I was coaching them for a bit while I was transitioning into this role. So I did also have a trial period for my new role where I was coaching the other two, kind of passing off everything I learned. And honestly, it was just mainly the coaching I got. I like highly recommend to anyone, whether it's fellow peers, whether it's a podcast like this one, whether it like take in some form of like SDR learning knowledge, because it's a very difficult job to learn by doing, because you are also required to book meetings. Like there is this unmistakable part of like, yes, you do have an obligation to get meetings, but also like if you're targeting VPs, C-level people, like they're not just going to give you their time because you're some 22-year-old on the phone. Like it really like you need to find a balance of coaching. And one really big tip I would give to anyone is record your calls and listen back to them.
Oh yeah.
Big, like huge tip. Listen back to them. And the only thing you should be doing while listening back to them is thinking, what question could I have asked better? You're looking for a conversation. You're not looking, if you go into it looking to book a meeting, that's kind of like the SDR version of commission breath. You're kind of wanting something from this person. You want to go into it looking for another conversation, a little bit longer conversation. Maybe the first one you cold call them 30 seconds, kind of give an exchange of value problem, be like, hey, can me and an engineer talk to you on the phone, see if this is important. Then the next one, that was another one of the cold calls I did was I just brought on the ethical hacker on with me, like a good friend of mine. So we just talked to the person. He's like, all right, yeah, let's book a demo. Like the demo came from me not being like, okay, this cold call has to go to the demo. It was like, all right, let's go from this, 30-second call to a 5-minute call. And then that 5-minute call, we show value because I brought someone who was way more knowledgeable on this subject than me into the next into the demo with the sales team. So I would say, yeah, definitely look for a conversation over booking a meeting. That was the biggest mindset shift that helped my success. But yeah, so that was just like the stuff that I would teach when I was teaching the two SDRs to kind of tie it together. And then my current role was actually when I was doing a lot of research on what our products are, I realized there was this gap of I really like being creative, and that's why I like copywriting. That's why I like the email side. Like I really like expressing that creative side. And I realized there wasn't much like product innovation happening within our team. So I kind of brought to the management team. I was like, hey, I'd really like to do this solutions developer role where I come up with the products and then enable the sales team and then kind of evangelize that. So my new role is a bit more on the creative side. I'm creating the products, but I'm also I use my BDR skills everywhere. So a lot of it is copywriting. Like I'm making the presentations that our sales team does in the demos and meetings. Like I'm creating those presentations. So a lot of it is understanding the problem. It's understanding the market. It's understanding like how do we solve that problem and save our customers money. Like I'm thinking all sales. I'm doing all sales. I still talk to customers and like ring up the phone. I still ask them for like feedback. How is our current products doing? What problems do you see happening next year that we can start solving? So the phone thing, yeah, definitely. I'm still making calls. They're not as cold, but it's definitely helped with my confidence on like, let's face it, like if all of us are, on the younger side, 25, 20, like just out of college, we didn't really grow up using the phone. We grew up texting.
Yeah.
We all grew up texting. So that's something my CEO and I like to joke is I'm like, he always picks up the phone anytime. Like he's always calling people all the time, which I think is really important as a CEO. But I'm like, oh yeah, Paul, I prefer texting. And he's like, that's so weird for your generation. He's like, I'm worried for you guys because you don't talk to each other. But being a BDR helped me with that kind of confidence. Now I can just pick up the phone, not really have any jitters or anything. It's weird how that works out, Like, why did we grow up texting so much? Why didn't we just call?
It's weird. I've never had like phone conversations up until like I started working. It was usually I'm a bit older. I'm 20. I'm turning 29 right now, but I think it's pretty much the same.
Pretty close.
Yeah, I've been like texting, and then like Facebook came, and then like chatting over DMs and stuff, and Messenger and all of that. But it's
and
never
those were
been
the
calls.
days in like
That
middle
was so
school
cool.
and after school. You would just hop on the laptop. You'd skip homework just to message all your friends about the stuff going on.
Exactly. I still cringe when Facebook sends me the yearly reminder of a post that I made like 15 years ago, 10 years. I don't even remember anymore. Okay. Too bad we're kind of short of time.
Yeah.
So
I'll wrap it up. Sorry, I'll just wrap it up real quick to kind of tie it back to the show. Is the switch I made all happened because of being a BDR. Like I saw that I needed to learn products, the pain points, the market. And then I realized I was gaining this skill and we have a need for it. And it's something that I would have more fun. So I did make like the lateral shift rather than going into AE. I went into this side role, but I also, everything I do, I keep in mind, not just the sales team, but like, how can the BDRs have an email sequence for this? Like, how can I help them with their scripts? How can it helps.
That's basically like some sort of sales enablement on steroids, right?
Yeah, it's like, because again, we are a smaller company. So like I'm creating the products, but then I'm also doing the sales enablement part. And I'm also doing like helping customer success. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Keeps me busy. Keeps me busy.
Exactly. When we chatted over LinkedIn, I remember saying like, you're 5 in 1. Like you have like so many hats. It's weird.
Yeah.
That was okay. So let's just dive into the rapid questions. I'm very curious to get your download on this. So, what do you think is the best BDR learning resource?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout them out because they were a part of my coaching team, the team we brought on to coach me, and I still think to this day their methodology is the best. The Voris team, have you heard of them? The company Voris?
I haven't actually. You're gonna send me their links and all, so I can
Yeah,
put them.
Vouris, Voris. They coach SDR. They build your SDR team in startups and tech companies. Like that's their role. And they've built, I think, over 40 B2B startup teams as of right
Nice.
now. Like they're very experienced in what they do. Very good. But yeah, Kyle Van Voris, the founder, has a ton of he's posted a YouTube video every day for like 2-3 years, and it's all SDR enablements. One of the coolest things they do is he does live cold call coaching. Well, not live. It's a YouTube cold call coaching with their BDR. So they have a BDR and he's like mentoring him, and he does their coaching sessions on YouTube. So
That's
you
so
can
cool.
get to, yeah, really good. Highly recommend. They're hands down the best resource that I have for this.
This is gold. Awesome. Okay, what would you say is the best SDR skill?
That's a that's a tough question.
There's so many of them.
I would say it depends on there because there's so many. It's like I'm thinking of like a Skyrim skill tree. They're like so many. Like it's what you're lacking, I would say, is the best skill to learn. I wouldn't say there's
Mhm.
any one best skill, but um, I I think one of the most important is definitely being able to in spirit of active listening that you mentioned earlier. I think it would be able to decipher the message, like be able to distill the message from words. Like a lot of times people say this is my pain point, but it's not the root point pain. It's like an effect of the actual pain. So like being able to dig deeper and be like, okay, you're saying this, but what you really mean, like what I understand of that is actually this other thing over here. That's really big, especially for overcoming objections, because a lot of times people can just give you objections, but what's really going on is like a very deeper layer that you kind of have to get to. And if you can solve that, then yeah, you're golden.
That's awesome. Uh, what are your best or rather favorite SDR creators to follow?
Kyle Van Voris.
There we go. Okay, this
Yeah.
guy, I gotta check. I've never heard of him. Um, maybe that's on me. We'll see. Okay, so what is your favorite SDR channel, like outreach channel?
Ooh, I wanted it to be email. I wanted it to be LinkedIn. I so didn't want it to be cold calling, but I saw the most success cold calling.
Yeah.
Dude, it really it changed my life for better or worse. Like
Mhm.
learning the skill of consistently booking meetings on cold calling, better or worse, changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. In that case, what is your favorite or most used cold call opener?
It would almost always be, hey, it's Armand with Trident Group. How's it going today? Then they would say their thing. I'd be like, that's great. Listen, I'm totally calling you out of the blue. You got 30 seconds. I'll tell you exactly why. I would say that permission based, do you have 30 seconds? I'll tell you why, um, is the biggest. I said, like, I'll notice shift in. I started hearing people say yes. Okay. And
Mhm.
like that kind of gives them at the very least, okay, so you bought 30 seconds. And it just kind of gets that conversation foot in the door.
What do you tell them then? Like, do you ask them questions? Do you explain why you're calling? Do you
Yeah.
go straight into
So
the pitch? Like, what's next?
I would tell them like, and this I'm shouting him out again. This all comes from Kyle and like the stuff I learned from him. But what I would do would be, so I would mention like, okay, so I speak with IT leaders or like whatever they were, like CISOs or whatever their title was, and what I've noticed is one problem here or one problem, another problem, like two important problems that show up in the industry. And then I'll say which one resonates with you. And from there, it's just you're a miner digging for gold. You're digging as to why that's a problem for them. You're trying to figure out like if neither of them was a problem, then you'd be like, all right, so what is top of mind for you? And then kind of dig from there. but it would be like presenting two problems. It wouldn't be me telling him what I did. I would say I would at one point I'd be like, I talk to IT leaders. I'm a cybersecurity consultancy. Out of curiosity, this is what we see the most. What can I help you with? And then problem A, problem B, and then yeah, from there, just try to figure out why is that a problem? What are they doing to solve it right now, if anything at all? And then I would once like I start pulling together all the information, then I could kind of assess and be like, all right, this is something we can solve. Hey, just letting you know, would it be worth the conversation if, this is what we do and this is how we solve it. This is the results we see. Are you interested, kind of thing?
Nice. You took away my next question, which is like, what's your go-to call to action? So you just did it right there. That's cool.
Yeah, that was a bit quick though. I would say like the better call to action for email. For talking on the phone, it would be like, are you interested in a future conversation? And then we would get down to it. For email, it would always be a direct like, are you free on this day at this time? Or something like something just not, hey, let me know if you think we should like maybe talk again in the future. Like on email, I would definitely, and I recommend to anyone, just be direct and be simple, like be as clear as possible what you're asking, because it's so like I do it on my own inbox. If anything's ever kind of like, hey, let me know if we should chat again, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, I don't even know what this is about. I don't even know what this is about. I'm not gonna just email you. Like it would have to be a very, very good email to do that. Or I'm not, I don't know if you do this, I'm not a fan of in your email saying, here's my calendar link.
Yeah.
Book something. I do that when it's like I'm talking to podcast guests and like we have a rapport, and then I give them the reason. I'm like, hey, here's my calendar link. It has all the instructions for the show. Like it has the questions I need to add. Like it just kind of speeds up the process. But if you're just a BDR, cold emailing, never talk to this person, telling them like book a meeting with me, that's kind of a bit of like, I don't know. I never really liked that tactic.
Same. It's really that's a shitty way of like booking meetings and like you want to create rapport. You don't want, like, I think that pushes people away more than it does anything else, especially today when it's just so much noise. Okay, last question. Your favorite tech sales acronym?
Honestly, CTA, call to action, just because I see the words CTA more than I see call to action, and I know exactly what it means. So like it's just CTA now just to me means like, what's the ask?
Yeah. Awesome. This was so good. I really enjoyed this conversation. I can't be more happy
I'm glad
that I reached out and just asked you to come on board. So this was amazing. I love the way you do sales, and this was awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm gonna have you on my show too. We'll trade spots.
Hell yeah. Hey, don't feel pressure. Like only if it brings value.
Yes, I'm sure it will.
Awesome.
All right, thanks, man.
Thank you for tuning in to the SDR Hire Podcast, the only podcast exclusively focused on SDRs, where successful salespeople share about their hiring stories and sales adventures straight from the trenches. If you found this useful, go ahead and share it with someone else you know is trying to break into tech or land their next SDR gig. You can find SDR Hire on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and catch you in the next episode.